All right, testing. Well, fabulous. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first of our two public meetings on Tomahawk SBC. I first and foremost want to thank all of you for coming here on this balmy summer evening. Obviously, lots of different things. This is yet another different thing. I can assure you I've never done a meeting like this in my ski coat, and probably you all haven't been in one of these either, but thank you all for coming. One of the things that makes our community really special is people's willingness to engage in conversation about topics and come help us figure out solutions. And so this is yet another example, and so you all being willing to spend an hour and a half of your evening out here tonight is a great example of that. So I also want to thank Lisa Creighton-Hendricks and the committee and the staff that helped put this all together. So when we started on this journey a little over a year ago, she agreed to take it on, and they put in a tremendous amount of work to take a look. I am a huge believer in what I call proactive decision making. And so sometimes I was asked, why did we do this? What if we're not going to do anything? Well, we might not do anything different, but I like to make that decision proactively as opposed to just falling into, why did we do that? Well, that's how we had done it before. And so if we make an informed decision to do nothing different, that's just fine. We will have done so in an informed way, which is great. So as most of you know, I'm David Dickey, I'm the mayor, and we are here tonight to talk about Tomahawk Road SBC, Safety, Beauty, and Connectivity. So why? 2022, we are going to be redoing Tomahawk Road end-to-end, curbs, drive approaches, road, etc. We do that once basically every generation, 20 to 25 years. And so if we're going to do anything different, now is the time to do that as opposed to boring under the road that we've already done, etc. So we put that committee together to take a look at this and review. And so tonight is no decisions will be made tonight. We have another one of these tomorrow where you're welcome to come back. You just need to RSVP again. I think we still have some open slots. There's been a lot of feedback via email, which we'll all be taking into account. Tonight is about the council having the opportunity to hear from all of you, listen, occasionally ask a clarifying question, but mostly just listen. Why Tomahawk? Well, Tomahawk is a unique street in our community for a couple of reasons. There are two streets in our community that run the entire length of or width of the city east to west, Tomahawk and 63rd. Tomahawk is the only one of those that is a couple of things. One is the only street interior to the city with a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Every other street interior in the city is 25. It is the only street that runs the width of our city that runs without a single stop sign or stop light from its easternmost to its westernmost point. It is the only street interior to the city that has bike lanes, and those bike lanes meet no known criteria for any bike lane ever, but it does have bike lanes. It touches 3 of the 5 non-residential structures in our city, the church, the city hall, and Indian Hills Country Club. It touches 13 islands and parklets as it winds its way from Kansas City, Missouri to Prairie Village, and it's a connector. So if we're going to do anything, and maybe we won't, now's the time to take a look at that because it's a critical piece of infrastructure in our city. We will spend about $2 million on it. In 2022, half of that will be paid by the county. And so we need to guide the engineers the right way. And the input from you all tonight and the residents tomorrow and that has been received via email will be critical to that. So the full council is here, which is great. Staff is over there. A couple important logistical items. So the podium right there, if you choose to speak, that's where you'll go. You're welcome to remove the mask if speaking through the mask is hard. Ideally, you can leave it on, that'd be great. Those of you who have not been to this facility before, there are 2 sets of restrooms. As you're facing me, most of you probably came in through what I call the back main entrance. It's a hallway that runs perpendicular to this table. There's a set of restrooms on the right. Or as you're looking at me, there's a hallway that runs parallel to this table. There's a set of restrooms to the left. We have water over there for everyone. And we have 90, now 84 minutes. There are not even 20 people here. Some of you are here with a spouse or significant other. I want to be respectful of your time. I want to be respectful of staff, council time. I'd ask politely that maybe start with 5 minutes as we get into discussion. And at the end, we can spend the entire 90 minutes here. I'm happy to do that. By the same token, I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to talk and that no one is sitting here at 6:55 saying, oh my gosh, I haven't had a chance to speak yet. So plenty of opportunity to provide feedback. And again, for us, it's mostly about listening. So if you don't hear us ask you a bunch of questions, that's purposeful. I happen to be a note taker on my laptop. Some of council is pen and paper. So if you see us doing that, that's what we're doing. And does anybody have any questions before we get started? So On Zoom calls, some of you may wonder, why didn't we do this as a Zoom call? Why here at 42 degrees outside? One, I've done Zoom calls with 40 people. Having a conversation is really, really hard. It's good for presentations or if somebody's hyper-directing it, but for a conversation, it's tough. And I think that conversation live and in person is important. So one important point, we are recording this tonight. There are people who are online watching. They may submit information and questions. You will be recorded. That recording will become part of public record. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that as we go. So typically in the Zoom calls that I've done, I find it most effective to start in one quadrant and just work my way across in terms of having people give updates, in this case, having people speak. I'm going to do that tonight. If you choose not to speak, you didn't lose your chance. You can come back around if you want to defer. It's like the Chiefs and the kickoff. And certainly I think we'll have time at the end for additional conversation for those who want to speak again. So if there are no questions, and I'm sorry, I both don't know everybody's name, can't read the name tags from this far away, and masks are still hard sometimes to figure out who's who. I'm just going to start here front left and see. I can read Debbie's. Debbie, would you like to start? Would you like to speak? No. Okay. Got it? You're up.
Just one point of order. We submitted 65 or so petitions signed and asked that they be included in the record.
Yes, and they have been.
Good.
Thank you.
So a lot of the comments that I'll talk about are things that we've already expressed to the committee and to you. There's a lot of thought, a lot of people have put their time and energy into this. I think I'm trying to distill things down into a couple of more obvious issues. One is that the eventual costs of re-engineering these two corners far outweigh the cost of actually enforcing the existing traffic laws, both in terms of speeding and in terms of distracted driving. These corners make pedestrians nervous, not because they're engineered badly. It's because people, especially commuters, ignore the traffic laws. Stricter enforcement would go a long way to solving the perceived problem that gave rise to these two projects. At the same time, that would improve the livability of our great little city here. Second, without the stricter enforcement of the traffic laws, the proposed Winonga Triangle solution might make public safety issues even worse than they are perceived today. The redesign would result in traffic from three streets, 67th, Indian Lane, and Winonga, being funneled into one lane of ingress and egress controlled by a single stop sign. That means that all three, cars from all three would come to a full stop. They would be presented then with turning right or left across traffic or into traffic. I know people have a problem with the oblique way that the current traffic situation works today on those two intersections. But imagine the safety concerns if we don't get people to slow down. We'll get some pretty catastrophic results of that, either crossing the southwest bound traffic lane and into the northeast direction, or making a hard right from a standing stop into a lane of traffic where people are going more than 25 miles an hour, in many cases, much more. And that's at the apex of the curve and less likely to be seen by people who are speeding from either direction. So to me, that redesign plan doesn't pass the common sense test. I've yet to meet a single neighbor who supports this redesign plan. We've presented you with 60 petitions or 65 petitions. A lot more people have come forth and want to be interested in this. If there are others who would like to sign the petition tonight, I brought a few extra. But I think that in short, enforcement is the best option here, not to spend money on a project that appears to be an expensive solution looking for a problem to solve. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Steve? Do you want to introduce yourself briefly, then go ahead?
I wanted to mainly come up here to take my mask off. But having accomplished that, my name's Steve Soden, and my wife Mary is out of town visiting a daughter in Bend, Oregon, or she'd be here. We have lived at 6701 Tomahawk for 15 years, a little over 15 years. When we bought that house and moved in, we had 5 kids at home. So right from the start, obviously, I was very keyed in to the traffic, the risk. We had littler kids, we had drivers. We have a perfect observation way because our property literally faces the complete island. As we look out, we sit on our front porch, we see the whole intersection right there. And I will agree with Peter. I think in our 15 years, I can't remember maybe 3 or 4 times that there was any kind of an accident there. And those were usually ice and snow related. Somebody's trying to make that curve too fast and hits the island and pops their tires. I am just certain that this issue doesn't really have enough merits to go forward. Talk to probably, I bet over the last 4 months, 5 months, 100 friends, some of them the 60 that have filled out the petition, others just in conversation, all Mission Hills friends and neighbors. No one is for this project. And to Peter's point, things changed when the bridge was redone on 63rd Street. And that flushed a lot of traffic that, you know, it's famous. Everybody goes 25 on 63rd Street, because I've paid a lot of tickets when our kids were driving, unfortunately, because they really, really have a reputation for monitoring that speed limit. Mission Hills then got all that traffic, and Mary and I will sit on our front porch and watch cars go by, and I'm thinking they're going 40 miles an hour. They have to. And some more than that, particularly some of the kids just screeching around that corner. So I think it's a speed issue. And I think that to spend that kind of money and redesign that intersection doesn't make sense to me. And if we had the same kind of a reputation on Tomahawk that they have on 63rd Street for you go 25 or you're going to be writing some checks, I think that problem would really get solved. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Laura Lee, just observing. I'm just going to start back this way. Oh, there's somebody here. Sorry, the pole. I'm fine. You're good?
Yeah, my name is Tom Rozak, and I'm here because safety is also a concern of mine, and it's safety on 63rd and on Tomahawk. Not so much for the cars, but for people who actually walk those streets. You have cars, even on 63rd, I respectfully want to say, go awfully fast. In Tomahawk, it's even worse. But try and cross one of the crosswalks. Even though they're designated as crosswalks, nobody stops. You're taking your life into your hands if you see a car coming. And I've proposed on a couple of different occasions that we ought to put maybe some of those little signs up that say state law requires you to stop. You know, we were walking across the crosswalk a while ago, and we were in the crosswalk, so it wasn't like we were standing there and cars were going by. This guy comes by in his truck. Of course, we yelled at him, and he had a few choice words to say to us, like we're wrong because we're in the crosswalk crossing when he wouldn't stop. So I think a little more, if we get some enforcement of the crosswalks and make it more of an issue for people driving through the city. The other thing is, I'm a firm believer that if we're redoing the street, we need to have a dedicated lane for walking and or biking. I've seen so many times a young mother walking with her stroller down the street, cars are zooming by her, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this looks so dangerous to me. And then, even worse, I'll see a mother with a stroller, and she'll have her little kids riding a bicycle or on a scooter. And little kids, they don't have any control. They are all over the lanes, and cars are driving by. So I really think a dedicated lane for walking and or biking would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Moving still this way. Can't quite read your name tag, I'm sorry.
Cheryl Turner.
Hi, Cheryl.
I just have a question for you. Is it a consideration at all that the speed limit be reduced and be in a reduced state for long enough to determine whether or not there's value before making a decision on whether to proceed with any recommendations at all?
I would certainly say that's absolutely possible. So one of the things, and the council heard me say this, probably a couple of them were frustrated by it, but we didn't want to do that until we had the initial conversations here. There were calls for to do it right away. I specifically said, let's let the committee bring the recommendations. We will not be redoing the road until 2022. So the reduction in the speed limit, if that's where the council chooses to go, could absolutely happen, more or less tomorrow or for some period of time that we could allow for measurement, tracking, and so forth. You've seen Fairway do the same thing over on Belinda.
Right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. Good? You can definitely not read that far back.
My name is Larry Winter. I live at 3135 Tomahawk Road. My wife and I moved here 11 years ago, and we specifically wanted to live in Mission Hills on Tomahawk Road. I love the way it meanders through Mission Hills. I love the tree-lined streets and sweeping lawns. I did attend a number of the meetings of this committee. I never saw any data to indicate that Tomahawk Road is unsafe for pedestrians. I know that's the perception of many, but I never saw the data that showed that. I'm a frequent walker. I have never felt unsafe walking on Tomahawk Road. Not once in 11 years have I felt unsafe walking on Tomahawk Road. I do see two potential, I think, significant problems that would result from adding sidewalks and making Tomahawk Road more narrow. These last 6+ months, my wife and I have probably spent more time in our front porch during the pandemic than we have in the years leading up to this. And one thing that stuck out to both of us is the number of bicyclists that are up and down Tomahawk Road. I think, is Tomahawk called an arterial road for motor vehicles?
It is.
I would say it's an arterial road for the bicyclers too. I see people going to work. I see people exercising. I see biking clubs up and down. If you make Tomahawk Road more narrow, it's going to have a terrible effect for the bicyclists and make them much more exposed than they are now. I just think it would be a big mistake. And I would also add that for runners or people like me with joint issues, I prefer to walk in the asphalt. Even on the streets that have sidewalks in Mission Hills, I'm walking in the street. I think it's just going to be a big problem if Tomahawk Road is made more narrow. It'd be one thing if it were a straight street, but a narrow, winding road to me just spells danger. The second thing is the on-street parking and what that would do if Tomahawk Road were made more narrow. In my block, over the last 2 years, I think there's been constant construction around us. And on certain days, there are cars parked all around on both sides of the street. If you add on top of that the lawn maintenance trucks with their big trailers with all their equipment, UPS, Federal Express, Amazon delivery, it's going to be a big problem for anyone going up and down Tomahawk Road, and that too is going to make it worse for anyone in the street or anyone on a bicycle. I just think it's going to create more problems and make it less safe. I have no problem lowering the speed limit. You talked about you call them the stripes for the bike lanes. I know they're not bike lanes. I'm all for moving those further away from the curb to visually give more space, more room for pedestrians. It would result in more separation from traffic. I think that's the way to go. I think it would be a terrible mistake to put sidewalks up and down Tomahawk. Thank you. Do you have any
Great.
questions for me?
No? Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Let's see.
Hi, I'm Larry's next door neighbor, and I remember when the police used to watch and patrol Tomahawk years ago. I don't know what's happened, if there's a change in the salary or the money devoted to that or what, but we have had 4 cars and a landscaping truck plowed in front of our house. I don't think the changes that they've proposed will make the drivers any better. I think it's a situation of distracted drivers. Be they texting or looking in the mirror or talking to somebody, but all of them have been just because people aren't watching, all the accidents. And I'm for proposing either a lower speed limit. I noticed the cars going by our house were slowing down when they had brief time, there was a flashing 30 mile an hour speed limit at Tomahawk Circle. And that seemed to help a lot, but they took it down, and I understand that people don't want flashing lights, but I think a stricter watch on the speed, and maybe, I didn't think the flashing sign was gauche at all, but I do love the trees. I know they said that they wouldn't be affected by changing the road, but the tree roots go out pretty far. I'm not sure exactly of how the construction would be with that, but I sure hope that they just keep the meandering Tomahawk and make it like Courtney said that, just a resurfaced Tomahawk would be one of the things they're looking at, and I'm all for that. It makes it nice without the potholes, but that's all.
Great. Thank you for being here.
Mm-hmm.
Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Zira Garcia. I live on 3210 Tomahawk. And ever since, oh my gosh, I was a teenager, which was many, many years ago, Tomahawk has always been my favorite street in this whole city. It's the most beautiful street, the windy roads, the trees. It was my dream to someday, I want to have a house on Tomahawk. And I am just really opposed to these changes. I support the opinions that our neighbors here have shared. I think that narrowing the road would actually create more dangers than produce a safety solution. There's just too many curves, too many cars parked for various reasons, construction, like was mentioned, landscaping, et cetera, deliveries. And I support maybe doing some creative, rethinking. I agree with promoting safety through controlling, enforcing maybe a lower speed limit, and maybe also just having more police presence to enforce that would be a good thing. That's pretty much in a nutshell what I think, and I support everyone's opinions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for being here. Ma'am?
I don't have my name tag because I arrived late, but I'm Gabrielle Beam, and I think my entire street is here. I'm at 3205 Tomahawk, so I'm in the neighborhood with a whole bunch of houses under construction, and now mine is, and so there's vehicles all over the place. Since my husband did not come, I have to represent that he wants a sidewalk because we have kids, and so he thinks it's safer if you narrow, because he wants it to be a side street, and I try to tell him It's not a side street. It will never be a side street. It is a major thoroughfare, but we've been working home since the pandemic, and we work in our dining room and look right out on the street. And I can tell you there's a number of times where he is looking out and people are flying by. And I do think that that is the biggest risk. I will say from my perspective, I'm pretty much like Larry. I run the streets, so I like to run on asphalt. If there's a sidewalk that takes up too much of the road, and then I'm preferring to run in the street, maybe to avoid the, slope for every driveway on the concrete sidewalk. I'm concerned about that, just the safety of that. But I do understand my husband's position and people with small children in the neighborhood that are trying to figure out a way to navigate with children on bikes and children walking. So it's not an easy solution. I don't know what is the best solution. We just want it to be safe and be able to get around. I do think it is a little aggravating for me that people don't do and walk, against traffic, ride with. I almost think we need signs because it's very aggravating to me because I think that creates its own headache with the traffic. But I had to present my husband's perspective of wanting sidewalks. I don't know if that's the solution or not, but that's my bit. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Good? Okay. Yes, sir?
Terry O'Leary, 6810 Tomahawk. Lived on Tomahawk 13 years, and my wife, Lynn, most people will attest, probably walks 10 times a day on 69th or Tomahawk or other streets. And so, we had 4 kids there growing up, so pretty familiar with the situation. I also agree that it's really, I don't see it as a dangerous, the islands and people going extremely fast that often, but there is the occasional speeder, obviously. My main concern is watching, as others have mentioned, strollers and mothers or families, dads with their kids, 2 or 3 kids riding bikes and trying to keep them all in the street, and people texting. And so even though it's a connector, I think the advantage could be that it is our only connector, but that's also the disadvantage, because if you push everybody to your only connector, then you have too many people on the street, whether it's bikers, cars, strollers, whatever. And I was doing a little research the last couple days looking for articles on traffic calming, and which we've done in our business several different ways, but there's a lot of different good traffic calming methods that you can engage at that corner in different places in Mission Hills. But it also talks a lot about when you're trying to put too many people on a street with bikes and strollers and wherever it is, and you have all the driveways and cars turning in and out of driveways, backing out, and so on. It creates more cause for injuries to bikers and walkers, runners, etc. So I think one of the beautiful things about Mission Hills is that you should enjoy walking and biking and driving on every street in Mission Hills, because it's amazing. I've been driving through there since I was probably 12, but I shouldn't have told you that. But in my dad's Volkswagen, but going to Homestead. But anyway, weren't any cops back then either, so I didn't get caught doing that. So maybe we need more. I was probably 13, but anyway. So I think that there are ways to calm that area if that's the main concern. I don't see how and when or if we would build a sidewalk, or who's going to walk from State Line all the way to on that one street. But again, I think encouraging people to use all the streets of Mission Hills to enjoy the houses and the landscape and the parks and so on, because I still think it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever driven in my life, in any city, driving and meandering through the different streets. So to promote people walking and biking and strolling and driving on one main connector seems to be kind of against the walkability and the way Mission Hills was designed as a pedestrian neighborhood. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Great, thank you, Terry. I think we've gotten everybody. But, no? No? Like, Courtney, do we have anything online specific? Okay. Would anybody like to speak again?
Dave, could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
To the audience. One of the things the task force struggled with was the issue, several of you identified crossings and signage, traffic calming. And I think the presumption that the task force, and I'm sorry, I'm Bill Bruning, and worked on the task force with the other people. The presumption was there's not a high tolerance in Mission Hills for flashing lights, signs, bumpers, slow speeds down. What else was referenced here? I would be interested, let's see. Yeah, crosswalks, traffic calming, and signage. I'd be interested in your sense, not necessarily even your position, but your sense of Mission Hills tolerance, flashing signs, more signs, anything that would make it safer but also obstruct kind of the bucolic view. Which way do you think the city as a whole would like to go? Safer crossings and pedestrian lanes, or opt for beauty and let people take some risks? And I'm talking kids, I'm talking strollers, I'm talking old people, all the people that are on the street. I don't have an answer, yeah.
Yep. Yep, if you could go to the microphone, that way the people who are online can hear you, it'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
It might address what Bill was asking, but I think the answer to your question is a few flashing lights out in the street by police cars pulling over a few folks could go a long way. But this is a question I had, because when we first got involved with this this whole question, the whole speed limit enforcement issue seemed to me to be the first and foremost way to address the question. So I inquired, and I was told that the police chief feels as though unless you're doing 9 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, the judge will not issue a moving violation. So I looked it up on Kansas law, and in fact, that's not the case. It's 6 miles an hour, but that's between 30 and 54 miles an hour. So there's no grace period under 30, nor over 54. And I'm wondering, is this a question of will? Do we need to insist that the police department enforce the laws more strictly? Because from where I came from the last 10 times, nothing like having a few traffic stops to calm the traffic. And once it becomes known that you can't drive through Mission Hills as a commuter and get away with driving at 40 miles an hour, traffic is going to go a different direction, or it's going to slow down, both of which works for me.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else want to comment on Bill's or question? Signs, lights?
I will vote for at least a few more signs. I think a couple more signs is not going to take away from the beauty of the city. And if it helps, or some flashing lights will help, I think it is potentially a better solution.
I think the only flashing light was talked about at Mission Drive and Tomahawk, and I think the risk to kids and people coming from Old Sagamore into an area we're driving people to enjoy more scares us all. I think that's the only place I heard them talking about flashing lights.
Well, I mean,
Potentially.
to the extent that flashing lights at crosswalks and particularly at 67th and Tomahawk, where kids are crossing to go towards Prairie Elementary.
Okay. Yes, sir. Terry.
again, just the research I read says in the urban bikeways and pathways, the most injuries are from crosswalks. I think it was 65 or 70%. And to what Bill said is, and I've mentioned this to Andy before, is you either have a crosswalk or you don't. I mean, so at Indian Hills, right by the pool, there's a sign with a crosswalk, but nobody even can see the sign, can't see the crosswalk. So in that case, you either need trees cut, better signs, better crosswalks, the little man in the street, whatever you want to do, because there's no point in even having that there. So either you need to have them and have whatever signs are needed to enforce them. And ever since they put stoplights or stop signs, I guess, on the plaza, people pay less attention to the people crossing the street. Well, take that back. Ever since they added some stop signs at some sections of the plaza, people have paid less attention to the crosswalks because there used to always be crosswalks. Everybody used to just stop. But if you go cross at where the steak burger place is, or where North Face is and all that, no cars stop anymore, hardly on the plaza. And they do stop in front of the grocery store at Hen House with the little sign and all that. So that, I know that helps. But I think you either have to have them or just get rid of them.
Thank you. Any other questions from up here, comments from those who are here? I've never been one that feels the need to fill the time with the task at hand. We will be doing this again tomorrow. And again, we have, Courtney, 10 slots open still if anybody wants to come back? So just call or just go tell staff right now you'd like to come back if you want to come back, or dial up online. This has been very helpful, and I appreciate those of you coming. Many of you have submitted email directly to either SBC or me. Thank you for that and for your feedback. And with that, I'll give everybody a bunch of their time in the evening back, and appreciate your feedback and commentary. Thank you.